Welcome back to Photo Finds. I'm your host, Kevin Yee, and this week we're going to poke around a little bit at Test Track at Epcot. Now, there's not necessarily a whole lot of news about Test Track, except for the new vehicles they've gotten recently, but we're going to take a kind of photo tour poking around the queue itself, just because we suspect that the queue will not be there when it comes back from its rehab. The ride is undergoing a refurbishment over most of the summer, scheduled to be closed probably around April. So we begin here at the beginning of the Fast Pass and the standby queues and sort of looking out into the queue, and you can see this fairly convoluted mess of lines and test equipment scattered around. As we wind our way through, we're passing by, and I'm sure you've seen these before, little sample chambers of what they might be testing. So for here, they're testing for sound baffles, or looking at old pieces of the cars to see how well they perform in safety tests. And so you see some of these safety tests on the side, like a head hitting something. The ride, as you remember, was based around sort of the crash test dummies craze of the 1990s, and so we have crash test dummies, and that they become us on the ride itself. So after looking our way through the queue, we get to the end of the standby queue. And I noticed that while I was here at the standby queue, even after all these years, I'll come across something I haven't really seen before. So like this light pole, as though it had been knocked over, and this is a styrofoam sleeve being demonstrated for what happens when you knock over the lights, or what happens when the light pole is meant to be broken away. So we have the three briefing rooms, and the first briefing room is always used now the third briefing room is now always used for single riders. Here's the new design you'll find of the cars. We've shown pictures of this recently, where Chevrolet is going to be the main focus, not General Motors. I thought I would take a couple of photos while I was on the ride, because we don't really know exactly what's going to change about Test Track once it changes this summer, so this may be one of your last glances at what Test Track is and what it does. Now, the warehouse has always been kind of barren, and I hope they change that. Here's a little glimpse up at the top, by the way, of the corporate lounge that you normally can't access. You make your way through the turns, and then the heat, cold chamber, right, and then the corrosion chamber. And then I wanted to point this out. There is no track course B, but you see the sign for 97 when they thought the ride would originally open. It didn't open until later than that. They were late. Here's a view of the truck that almost hits you, and that is a cutout of LBJ, the president. And you can see another view of the same thing, the truck almost hitting you. Then the crash test barrier, and then the barrier test itself. Then we're outside through the high-speed loops, and then back to the station. Now here is something I wanted to point out. In the post-show area for years and years now, they haven't had this video running behind these welding robots as though they're on an assembly line. It doesn't look right without the video in the background. General Motors has some advanced car, sort of hybrid car technologies on display up in the corner. This used to be used for a kind of a miniature simulator ride. Now they've got a couple of screen games you can play, matching and so forth, with their fuel cell vehicle and the Hy-V vehicle on display on the side that hasn't really changed in many years. One thing that has changed since Chevrolet is now the sponsor and not the rest of GM is they no longer do the show. They used to have a countdown up here in the center of the post-show area, and then things would revolve. So these stages would revolve, and you'd see the other side of the stage. Now the stages are permanently set in the three scenes I've shown you here, and they don't revolve anymore because they only want to show you the Chevrolet cars, and Chevy is sort of the main sponsor of the pavilion now, instead of Buick and GMC and Cadillac, which have really all been phased out. This was something new too. They're displaying a projector onto a screen, which is kind of taken over the windshield of this particular car. So I thought I'd take pictures of the crash test dummies around the area just in case they don't make it past the refurbishment. General Motors is still prominently displayed on them, and I suspect it'll be more about Chevy. Now in the shop at the end, they have gone more to some of these Chevy sort of decorations, and you can see some of the new signs they've added to the racks. And then lastly, a couple of new t-shirts here, Test Track t-shirt and another generic one, although this one puts kind of a ghosted Mickey in the rearview mirror driving around Test Track. I thought that was kind of a neat concept for them to use as a t-shirt. That does it for this edition, and we will catch you next time.